Okay. So I want to welcome you all. Thank you for being here and take part of your time today to be here at these lectures, and that we will share about what is Buddhism. And let's talk a little bit about our life, our experiences, and that is what Buddhism is about. And we might know each other, we might not, but we all share the same wish to be happy and to be free from suffering, don't we? So, and I'm gonna start saying that we all suffer, we had suffered, and we will suffer in the future. That's something that happens in life, I guess. And that is why we are here to explore why we experience dissatisfaction and if it is possible to achieve a state of lasting happiness. And so at this point, I would like to start the lecture of today, with a minute to calm down our minds, to set up our motivation of being here together, thinking that whatever time we spend here may be beneficial for ourselves, for others. So let's just start just sitting down straight, wherever you are sitting. And please take 3 deep breaths and think about it. Thanks. As I just mentioned it, we all want to be happy and content. So let's include others in our motivation. May this be beneficial for ourselves and others. Okay. So good morning again, everyone. My name is Carlo. I'll be guiding this course about the Four Noble Truths, about the Intro to Buddhism. Welcome. And as I just mentioned it, something important to consider is that we all want to be happy and content. That has nothing to do with religion, race, nationality, preferences, habits, jobs, or even age. That's an aspiration we'll have every single day. And we all want to be happy, to avoid suffering, experiences that cause us to suffer. So that is what Buddhism is about. Yeah. So I will present the different aspects of the course today, and then we'll take a break, and then we will come back with some questions. So I will leave I just want to let you know that I will leave a time for question and answers. And but feel free to put your questions also in the chat if you don't want to forget them. So um and I would like to share, I might say that whatever information I will share here comes from the teachings that I received from my own teachers, and we can track all them to the Buddha himself. So whatever credit is for him. And also please be aware that although I will talk from experience, you don't need to accept or agree with anything I say here. The Buddha will always encourage us to reflect, to analyze, to think, not just to accept or reject anything based on our actual perception of things. So let's hope that at least some of this information could be useful for all of you joining us. So let's start. What is Buddhism? In a nutshell, Buddhism is a comprehensive set of methodologies designed to learn how to stop suffering by transforming the confused mental states that led us to misunderstanding the reality. And Buddhism says that these confused mental states are eventually the causes of all our problems. Yeah, Buddhism is based on the understanding that we all, as I already mentioned it, we all, without exception, experience with dissatisfaction or suffering. But let's say we have problems, and at the same time, we all want to be happy. We all want to avoid suffering. So Buddhism says that we can all be happy and eliminate the suffering if we can transform these confused mental states that distort our perception of reality. And by transforming them, we'll be able to see our true nature of ourselves, the true nature of all things around us. So we can say that Buddhism, a very important, crucial point in Buddhism is that we all have the potential to become Buddhas. Buddha is a Sanskrit word that means to awake, so we can get awakened. That's what Buddhism is. All Buddhist teachings could be included in 3 baskets or sections, depending on the topic that we discuss, or that they discuss or they talk about. The first one is a basket related to discipline. We'll talk about this later. This is just an introduction. The second is the basket or pitaka related to the speeches, basically to develop concentration. And the third one, the Abhidharma, or the higher basket, we call it also, the most advanced teachings about reality are described in this section. So that's a general introduction of what is Buddhism. It's a methodology, it's a set of methodologies designed to learn how to stop suffering, stop creating the causes of suffering, and start developing the causes of happiness, of lasting happiness. Yeah. I would like to start with 3 basic misconceptions that we might have about Buddhism. Probably no misconceptions, but general ideas that we normally have about Buddhism that I would like to discuss a little bit, to explore. The first one is that, is Buddhism a religion? Second one will be, is Buddhism a philosophy? And the third one is that, if is Buddhism a psychology? Yeah, let's explore a little bit about this. The first one, is Buddhism a religion? Okay. Is Buddhism a religion? The answer is, it depends on how you understand religion, or we understand religion. In the West, we normally associate religion with 4 different aspects, or 4 different points. The first one will be a creator God. In the case of monotheism, like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they talk about a creator God, right? Or different gods in the case of polytheism, like the Greeks or the Hindus, Hinduism in general. Or so we find the divine God or the deity to worship, or to love, or to be afraid of. That's the first point. A creator God or gods, depending on the religion. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. We're just exploring, okay? We're just saying, well, the first point will be a creator God. The second point of a religion, generally speaking, as we understand it or associate it here in the West, is, in a religion we find the concept, there's a concept of an intermediary, a messenger, a prophet, a messiah, or one or several. We find this this character, we can say, all this point, in religions, the concept of an intermediary, a messenger, a prophet, one or several, as I mentioned it. And then we have the third point is that, in general speaking, in religions, the truth or the message is revealed to this messenger, and then he or she builds a bridge between the divine and the humanity. Serves as his name says, as a messenger, as a bridge in between the divine. There's a message that needs to be that needs to be known by the humanity through these prophets or these intermediaries. And then the fourth point about religion in general is the aspect of the word that we will use is the dogma. What is a dogma? The dogma is a set of principles laid down by a religious authority as an undeniable truth. Yeah, so we are obligated to accept and follow them if you are part of certain religion, right? So we have these 4 points. Once again, we have the creator God, one or several. We have the messenger or the intermediary. We have the truth that is revealed. Yeah? And then we have the dogma, a set of principles laid down by a religious authority that we need to follow or to obey. In addition, generally speaking, I will say that religions start with the answers. They tell us, this is so, that is so, this is that is like that, and they are based on belief. So if for you this defines a religion, then we don't find any of those elements in Buddhism. There is no divine God or gods. The Buddha is not a creator. The Buddha was a human being who, due to his effort, saw reality and shared this experience. Yeah. And as there is no divine God, then there is no revelation or message to provide us to a messenger or a prophet. So it is not necessary because there is no message there's no divine God, or we need a bridge. So there are no dogmas either. That is something interesting. Buddhism doesn't force anyone to accept the concepts or explanations of the teachings. Rather, it encourages us to reflect on them, to think about them, to explore how real or not those explanations are. We could also talk of the aspect of a liturgy, that it's a certain way of practicing the religion, that you cannot deviate from the marked, defined, clear structure. In Buddhism, we have this aspect, but it's not the same and identical one for all the Buddhists, meaning that we don't practice the same things in the same ways. It depends on each individual's life situation. And and also Buddhism doesn't start with the answer. Rather, it starts with the questions. What, why, how, when, where to go. And all the questions are welcome. That's also important. All the questions are welcome. We need to question our reality, our perception, our world, because it is by exploring that we can reach an understanding. Yeah, it is because an understanding gives you a deeper meaning. It gives us a deeper meaning of our lives. The beliefs could also be useful. We are not denying that. Certain beliefs could be very useful. As well, here, we can see that they are useful in science too. All scientific discoveries start with a belief. How do we call a belief in scientific words? Who would like to say? How do we call a belief in scientific words?
Hypothesis.
Hypothesis?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a hypothesis, exactly. So, but we don't start at the level of belief. Instead, we don't stay at this level of just believing it. You know, hypothesis is a belief. Then we subject that hypothesis to experimentation and tests. And then after enough experimentation, the hypothesis is either discarded or becomes certainty or law. So Buddhism is, in some aspect, it's kind of start with hypothesis, subject to verification and experimentation. So once again, all questions are welcome, okay? So that's the first point. Is Buddhism a religion? Then we have the second point. Is Buddhism a philosophy? Yeah, well, because we find a lot of philosophical discussion in Buddhism in general. So, well, the Western philosophy, that is the love of wisdom in Greek, philosophia, philos meaning love, friendship, and sophia means wisdom. It's great, profound, you know? But two of the main differences between Western philosophy and Buddhist philosophy is that Western philosophy always refers to some unchanging essence or characteristic, yeah, in things in general. I mean, I'm talking in a general way, you know. And we based on the, let's say, Greek philosophy. They end up finding something, some essence or characteristics in things that are unchangeable. That's the first point. And then the second point is that, generally speaking, philosophy is sustained as both a means and an end. A means and an end. But Buddhist philosophy, on the other hand, does not. It refers to the interconnection of everything. So we cannot find a fixed essence in the reality. We will explore this a little bit later. And knowledge, in this case, the knowledge or the love to knowledge, is not an end in itself, but a means to transform the mind, to transform our perception. That would be one of the second difference. Yeah. It's a philosophy. Well, yeah, we can say, but it depends again. Yes, but no, something like that. But an important point here is, well, we should distinguish between the Western philosophy is generally they talk about an essence, an unchanging essence, and it refers or is sustained as both means and an end. In the case of Buddhist philosophy, no, it's just it's a mean, it's a mean to transform the mind. You know? It's a tool to transform the mind. So let's explore the last one. It's Buddhism psychology. I mean, just consider that this is a very general explanation. I'm sure that I have here people that they know a lot about psychology or philosophy or religion. But this is a very general explanation, you know, just because it's an introduction. So we said, is Buddhism a psychology? The third question. Buddhism is often referred, you will hear that, as the science of mind, especially by the Buddhists. And it has a big psychological section, yeah, that talks about our perceptions, our feelings, our mental factors, human behavior, habits, you name it. So it has a big section devoted to our psychological well-being, we can say. Yeah. But again, if we analyze the Western psychology, basically says that we have our good and bad side. You can call it a positive side or an erotic side. And what we do in therapy, which is I found that it's very good, is to identify both sides and try to live with them in the best way as possible, which is quite useful. But Buddhism in general is not just a psychology in the Western academic sense. Yeah? It shares many goals and methods with the psychological practice. But Buddhism says that we can get rid of all the neuroses eventually, not just try to live with it. So in that sense, it covers a much more profound goal and methodology. But of course, I need to mention again that there's a huge or a big section devoted to our psychological well-being in the Buddhist teachings. That's why they say sometimes it's Buddhism psychology. Yeah. Okay, well, so if it is not really, well, it has religious aspects, but it's not really a religion, or it's not really a philosophy in the Western point of view, or it's not really psychology. So what did Siddhartha Gautama find? What did the Buddha, what we call him Buddha, what did he find? What is his teaching? What's his discovery? We can say that. First of all, no one was called Buddha ever. The person that we call Buddha, or the Buddha, was called Siddhartha Gautama. Was a prince from India, from northern part of India. And Buddha means the awakened one, refers to a mental state, basically. And as general information, that little chubby guy that people worship as a Buddha is not Siddhartha. He was a Chinese man called Milo or Milofu. Sometimes they call it the laughing Buddha in Asia, but basically this character Milo, he was a beggar that used to go from one city to another and used to give gifts to the local children. And in fact, it is believed that he was not that fat, that chubby. Yeah. They represent him as fat as a sign of abundance in the Chinese culture or the Asian cultures in general. If you notice, he has Asian or Chinese features, and the Buddha Siddhartha, he was Indian. So having said that, what the Buddha did was to share his direct experience about reality. A bit like Isaac Newton. Newton didn't create the law of gravity. Yeah? What he did is that by observing an apple falling down, realized that there is a law called gravity that attracts the bodies to the earth. Every mass implies an attractive force on every other mass. He say that. And this force is known as gravity, but it existed before Newton. In a similar way, the Buddha was an individual who, through his own efforts, managed to overcome the obstructions that clouded his mind, recognizing the nature of reality by freeing himself from those obstructions and understanding the reality. In doing so, he freed himself from suffering and gained the tools to help others to achieve the same state he attained. There's a well-known phrase from Nagarjuna, a great Buddhist master. He says, I prostrate to Gautama, to the Buddha, who through compassion taught the true path, which led us to the abandoning of all false view. all false view or wrong views about reality and ourselves. So the Buddha discovered, or well, observed and realized his own nature and the nature of reality. And then he explained to us, he shared with us his discovering. I did this so you can also do the same thing to achieve the same state that I got, that I achieved, that I developed, that I discovered in me. So again, from the Buddhist point of view, we all have this, but all of us, we have this potential to become Buddhas or to achieve the same state that the Buddha, that Siddhartha achieved. That's something important. Okay, this is what the Buddha found. We will also talk a lot about the mind. You will hear a lot about this term in Buddhism. Since I started probably today, we started talking about the mind, how we perceive things. So I will try to define a little bit what is the mind. Let's try to explore what is the mind, the concept of mind. The concept of mind in Buddhism is interesting, actually. Right now, we have a concept of what the mind is. And every time I mention the word mind, we connect it with the concept that each of us has of this term. However, the Buddhist concept of mind is a central element of work as a tool of observation, as a tool of as an object of transformation, as a goal of development. Now, in the West, we often understand the mind as the brain or something generated by the brain, or only the rational or intellectual aspect of ourselves. So we draw a clear distinction between mind and heart. For example, we may say, I think this, but I feel something else, referring to the rational and emotional aspects in a different group or section. But I think that none of this corresponds to the Buddhist concept of mind. That the term mind is it's a very limited translation of the concept that they call it in Sanskrit vijnana or sem in Tibetan. That it means that on one hand, we have the physical aspect of existence and the non-physical or non-material nature, the nature of experience. Okay? We call it mental nature in Buddhist terms, yeah? That is perception. Moment by moment, we live through a series of experiences, insights, emotions, feelings, including sensory experiences, intellectual or rational aspects, as well as emotional experiences and cognition. So mind, rather than being a package, is something that happens moment by moment, that changes every instant. And all this continuum of non-physical subjective experiences is what we call the mind. The great teacher Mipam Rinpoche says that the mind is clear and knowing. He also says that the secrecy of the nature of the mind is so simple that is why it's hard to see it. All negative emotions arise when we don't know that all this ordinary perception that we have is just illusion, we can say, or reflection or illusion. So the mind, just to be clear, the mind in Buddhism includes all the different cognitive experiences. All our perception is included in the term mind, according to the Buddhist point of view. what we feel, what we emotions, I mean, all our emotions, our feelings, our intellectual, rational aspects, as well as emotional experiences. All this is the mind, all this package of, well, of this continuum of mental events, you can say, yeah, related to our perception. So far, we have explored a little bit of, well, what is Buddhism a religion? Is Buddhism a philosophy, psychology? What the Buddha found, yeah, Siddhartha Gautama, and what is the mind? Probably there are many new concepts for some of you, or for some of you are not. So having said all this, what is Buddhism based on? What is Buddhism based on? Buddhism is fundamentally based on benefiting others as much as we can, and if not, at least on not harming them. This includes not harming ourselves. And what is the greatest harm that we can do to ourselves? That's what we can just bring up this question. What is the greatest harm that we can do to ourselves? According to the Buddhist view, will be remaining in confusion, remaining in ignorance of who we are, because the farther our view of life is from reality, the more we suffer. Yeah. The closer we get to an understanding of reality, the less we suffer. So the Buddha's basic teaching consists of an explanation of our current situation and our development potential, can say it with these words, presented in 4 points known as the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, this package of teaching gave it from the Buddha that provide us a tool, or different tools, to observe our reality, to work with our own mind, and to gradually overcome our obstacles. Yeah, these Four Noble Truths, we can say was the first teaching that the Buddha gave after he experienced what we call enlightenment in Bodh Gaya in India. Then after this experience that he had, that basically was is described very nicely in the night of enlightenment that he went through, all the different levels of obscurations or perception. I mean, normally, as I mentioned, we have these cognitive veils and emotional veils and all these, we call it obstacles in Buddhism, or afflictive emotions that obstructs our view from reality. So he went through all this during the night of enlightenment, and then he overcame all these obstacles and achieved what we call enlightenment, or this experience of Buddhahood. And then after that, he was thinking, should I share this or not? And he decided, well, yeah, I will share what I discovered, what I've seen about reality. And the first teaching that he gave was the Four Noble Truths. This package of teaching, as I mentioned it, that includes, provides tool to observe our actual situation. Basically, the Buddha is describing our actual situation, which is suffering or dissatisfaction in general, and and the potential that we have to overcome this dissatisfaction. Yeah. So let's explore a little bit the Four Noble Truths. as an introduction. Four Noble Truths. This package, as I mentioned, this package of teachings given from the Buddha that explain our actual situation and the potential that we can develop. Seriously, for me, I think that's an extraordinary teaching that explains us everything. Not all the, I mean, try to be a little bit analytical. Not all the presentations or theses or explanations of a topic cover everything we need to know about it. The Four Noble Truths explain what, why, what for, and how. What is happening to us? Dissatisfaction. Why? Because there are some causes. What for we engage in all this? To eliminate dissatisfaction. If that's possible, then how do we do it? By having a path or a clear methodology. So these teachings are called Noble Truths because of many things. One of it is because it is because there is nothing more noble than to look and explore our inner being, our minds, our hearts. Also, it refers that another explanation will be there. Those it refers to 4 points that are facts that are obvious for a noble being, a person who has seen reality as it is. And remember, if something is true, it is true for everyone, not just for a chosen people or a special person. Keep this in mind. If something is true, it is true for everyone. Okay? That's the Buddhist approach of how should we approach reality. Okay, so let's explore the first noble truth, and then we will take a short break. The first noble truth that talks about, well, I will just mention the four of them. There is the truth of suffering, or dukkha in Sanskrit. Then we have the truth of the cause of suffering, samudaya, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path. As I mentioned it, they explain what is going on, suffering, dissatisfaction. Why, sorry. What's going on, suffering. Why we are experiencing suffering? Because of there are certain causes of it. What for are we here? Exploring the Four Noble Truths. To achieve the cessation of suffering. Nirodha. How do we do that? By following a path. Yeah, by having a clear methodology or a path. Okay. So let's explore the first noble truth today before the break. The truth of suffering. The word suffering is a big generic. The actual translation for the Sanskrit word, I mean, this is not a Sanskrit, a teaching on Sanskrit, but sometimes to go to the meaning of the words is quite useful. The Sanskrit word dukkha is dissatisfaction. So suffering is just a small part, is the gross part of dissatisfaction in general. So suffering isn't just about the obvious pain or distress, but includes more subtle forms of dissatisfaction, not just physical pain, but also emotional and psychological dissatisfaction. Now it includes the pain of change, when pleasure or good times eventually end, and the all-pervasive suffering, the fact that that we are under the control of negative emotions. And I want to be clear about something here. In Buddhism, we talk about suffering not in a negative way, not in a masochist way, or because we Buddhists love suffering. No, not at all. We want to get rid of it. But in order to defeat an enemy, we need to know, we need to understand him from all its angles and faces. So, in this case, we won't confuse suffering with happiness. That's the main point. To identify, to learn how to identify what is suffering and what is not. Because there are subtle levels of dissatisfaction that we mistakenly call them happiness. So let's explore these three levels of dissatisfaction and try to see if we can relate them or see in our daily lives. The first one over there, no. The first one over there is the common dissatisfaction. Yeah, often referred as the suffering of suffering. That refers. I can mention a list of different types of suffering of common dissatisfaction, but I'm sure we are all familiar with this first type of suffering. The physical pain that includes any form of bodily discomfort or pain, such as illness, injury, chronic conditions, birth, old age, sickness, death are some examples too. Then we have the emotional pain. That includes depression, feelings of sadness, grief, anxiety, or the anguish that arise from personal loss, rejection, trauma. This also refers to negative emotions or a negative that all this anxiety that comes from a negative thoughts or negative patterns or habits. Yeah. If he leaves me or she leaves me, if I don't get enough, if it changes, all this mental pain or emotional pain. That's also a common dissatisfaction, part of it. The suffering of loss, the suffering that we experience from losing something or someone important, including the end of relationships or loss of possessions. The suffering of facing things that we don't want. Does that familiar or no? The suffering that experience from meeting something or someone that we don't like, basically. And then we have the suffering from, we call it unfulfilled desires. That is basically the pain of frustration that arises when our desires and expectations are not met. That hurts too. Yeah. It is a bit uncomfortable. So that's the first level of suffering that the Buddha talked about, the suffering of suffering, the common suffering. This type of suffering that I just mentioned are considered the direct, are often the most noticeable forms of dukkha. They're obvious. We all can, I mean, I'm sure that all that I mentioned here is something that we can relate with. We don't need to believe in that. You know, something that we can analyze and see, well, have I experienced this or not? But then we have two more levels of suffering or dukkha or dissatisfaction. Just keep in mind that I'll keep using the word suffering, but in general, keep in mind that it means dissatisfaction. We have the suffering of change, the second one, that refers to the unpleasant experiences or the dissatisfaction that arise when all the nice things or experiences or pleasant experiences do not last. And that those experiences eventually shift into unpleasant ones. It's not just about the initial pain of change, but about the fundamental, we'll call, nature of transformation or impermanence of all experiences. Yeah, the object of happiness transforms into an object of suffering, and you cannot longer stand it. The happiness that we get from attachment, that means from the medium to the medium of the senses, does not last. And not only does not last, but it starts to decrease moment by moment. That's the suffering of change. Let's say we really want to, it's kind of cold, so we want to get into a hot tub. Then we get into the hot tub. Oh, it feels very good, relaxing. But then after 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, this object that was so pleasant at the beginning starts transforming into an object of dissatisfaction. I cannot stand long. I mean, it's too hot now. I need to get out of this hot tub. That's the suffering of change in general. Very subtle. But then we have another one. You can see it there. That is called the all-pervasive suffering. This is the third and is the more subtle way of suffering. It refers to the fact that we are under control of our negative emotions all the time. I mean, we could be calm right now, but the potential to suffer is here. And the negative state of mind, different negative states of mind, can arise at any moment. If someone pushes the right button, yeah, all this negative state of mind will will just come out. They are ready to come out. Yeah, this all-pervasive suffering or dissatisfaction refers to the very nature of what we call samsara or cycle. That means we do not suffer one time for one thing. We suffer several times for the same thing. That is what we call samsaric existence. It's not about it's not about any specific experiences or incidents, but about the underlying dissatisfaction that pervades all aspects of life within this cycle of birth and rebirth that we cannot control right now. We don't know why we are here, but we are just here. That means that an untrained mind, a mind that has neurosis basically, is not reliable to get lasting happiness as long as it has negative emotions. It basically means that we are deluded by the by a false belief, false belief in impermanence and independent self, or of myself, or of things in general. So keep in mind this, that samsara, the word samsara, refers to cyclic existence. It's not a place. It's a mind that is subject to mental afflictions and contaminated actions. Karma. We'll explore a little bit about it. Nagarjuna, again, said that nirvana, I'm sure you have heard the word nirvana, that means liberation. Nirvana is not what comes after samsara. It's not like a kind of heaven that Buddhists go. Where do you go when you pass away? I go to nirvana. No, it's not a place. Rather, nirvana or liberation is the absence of samsara, of the causes of samsara. When we end up with this neurosis, with this negative, these negative emotions that make us perceive reality in our wrong way, then that is nirvana. We'll explore it in the third noble truth, the truth of cessation. But generally speaking, keep this in mind. Samsara is not a place. It refers to a mind that is subject to mental afflictions or neurosis. That is the third level of suffering, the all-pervasive suffering. So we will take a break of 10 minutes and we'll come back. So it's 10:25. We will come back at 10:35.
Okay, see you soon.
Welcome back. Let's move to the second noble truth. We have a few minutes more, and I will also like to have a question and answer session. So for the second noble truth, the truth of the causes of suffering, samudaya in Sanskrit, the cause of suffering is rooted in our cravings and attachment. This involves our desire for things in general, in a certain way, our attachment to pleasures, our aversion to discomfort or pain. These cravings and attachments create this cycle, this samsara, or this cycle of dissatisfaction and unfulfilled desires, perpetuating the suffering. Yeah. The two main causes, write this down, the two main causes of suffering, of dukkha, according to the Buddha, are the confused mental states that lead us to a misunderstanding of reality, and the actions, the contaminated actions that we create under the influence of these states of mind. Okay? In Sanskrit, the confused mental states are called kleshas. That means a state of mind that when it appears, creates agitation, dissatisfaction in our mental continuum. And based on that habits or tendencies, we create actions. In Sanskrit, we call it karma. So klesha and karma are the main causes of suffering, according to the Buddha. We know that there are some causes of suffering. Well, we just don't identify the main cause of suffering. According to the Buddha, there are those two: contaminated or afflictive emotions and the actions that come motivated by these afflictive emotions. So we can summarize all the neurotic or afflictive state of minds into three. We call it the three mental poisons of confusion, attachment, and anger. So let's define each of them. First one is confusion, or often referred as ignorance. But it is not being ignorant about intellectual knowledge only. That's a type of ignorance. We are referring to a basic confusion of how we see ourselves and the things around us. Ignorance is a state of mind, I wrote it over there, concerning the condition of existence of all things. And there are two types. An obscuration which ignores how things exist, and on top of that, a wrong perception of that reality that makes it worse. That might make things worse. You know, Dharmakirti says ignorance is an first of all, it's an incorrect perception of our reality. And then basically it says that it's not that we have a mistaken conception about reality. On top of that, we are unaware of how reality is. Let's say we are not, let's take the example of impermanence. We are not just unaware of impermanence. On top of that, we think, we wish that things will be permanent. That's ignorance. So the ignorance is not about intellectual knowledge or studies only. I remember when I gave this talk in Boston, where Harvard is, in Harvard actually, a little bit with one time I was just talking a little bit about this, and I remember in that study group in Harvard, there some people were shocked when I mentioned about ignorance. They even told me, "Don't call me ignorant. You know, I have much more knowledge than you," and they're right, you know. But I was talking about ignorance about ourselves, about our reality. In Sanskrit, we use the word avidya. That means not being able to see. In Tibetan, we call it marikpa, no clarity about reality. Yeah? To see what? To see the reality of impermanence, of interdependence, of the consequences of our actions, of the suffering that comes with all the neurotic state of mind. If we are not able to see this, then we are ignorant from a Buddhist perspective. Yeah, this fundamental misconception of believing that things are absolute and independent is the exact opposite of the truth, because we are completely in an interdependent scenario. Then based on that ignorance, we generate two negative emotions of attachment and aversion or anger. So let's explore what is attachment. We already explore ignorance. Attachment is a state of mind that exaggerates the positive qualities of an object, of a person, of a place, of a situation. Worse yet, it projects positive qualities that are not actually present in the object, wishing to obtain the object, and generating expectations. So attachment is not that you like something. We should go to the definition. Is a state of mind that exaggerates the positive qualities of an object, of a person, of a place, of a situation. Or worse yet, as I said, projects positive qualities that are not actually there. That is attachment, though, an exaggeration. And then we have aversion or anger. Anger and attachment are two sides of the same coin. When attachment doesn't get what it wants, anger appears. Remember this, when attachment doesn't get what it wants, anger appears. Anger is a state of mind that exaggerates the negative qualities of an object, person, place, situation. Worse yet, again, it projects negative qualities that are not actually present, desiring, as a consequence, to get rid of the object or the situation as soon as possible. I mean, does that sound familiar, or it's just me? We have attachment and anger. So now, based on these emotions or states of mind, we create actions with body, speech, and mind. What we do, what we say, what we think. That is what we call karma. Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action. That's it. There's nothing holy or secret about it. We can create positive actions, good karma. We can create negative actions, bad karma, or neutral actions. And be aware that good or bad doesn't refer to a moralistic point of view. It refers to the result of the action itself that is based on the motivation behind the action. For Buddhism, the motivation or intention behind the action is much more important than the action itself. So karma is a Sanskrit word that means action, together with the word vipaka. The entire process is called the principle of cause and effect, or action and consequence, karma vipaka. In this case, karma, more than a belief, implies the same logic as Newton's third law of motion, that karma applies. I mean, in the case of karma, we should apply the same logic, but to the mind, to our experiences. Every action has an equal and positive reaction. Sorry, opposite. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. And the actions, to end up with the actions or karma, have four main characteristics. The first one is that karma is definitive in the sense that virtuous actions lead to happiness and non-virtuous actions lead to suffering. Karma is expansive in the sense that karma increases, the actions increase, the result is greater than the cause, but positive and negative could be. The third one is no action means no effect. That means that if you have not created the cause, you cannot experience the effect. I have clearly not created the cause of winning the lottery yet. Yeah, so I have not been able to experience the effect. And then the last one is nothing is lost. That means that even if years or lifetimes pass, it remains, we call it latent there. However, it can be modified or purified. Karma is something in motion, fluctuating, that can be modified daily. If we change the latent cause, then we would change the result. Let's see, if I have a box of matches, each of them has the potential that if I strike it, it will result, I mean, the result will be fire. But if I wet them with water, then I change the cause and therefore I change the effect. So karma refers to the principle of cause, condition, and effect in our actions and has these four characteristics. So let's open to question and answer, the session of question and answers, in case you have some.
Can you explain a little bit more about all-pervasive dissatisfaction? Because that is not very easy to understand. Because
Sure. The third kind of suffering, right? The all-pervasive suffering. Basically means that to the fact that we are under the control of our negative emotions right now. That we have this potential of continue creating the cause of suffering because, and this is a very important point to understand, actually, you're very right, because in order to develop real compassion towards others, we should see the suffering. The moment we see the suffering in others, we develop a sense of compassion. That means the wish of others will be free from suffering. But if we don't see the subtle level of suffering, the fact that having a mind with afflictive emotions is itself suffering, that opens our view creates a wider view about ourselves and our people surrounding us. So basically, the all pervasive suffering means that the fact that we are right now under the control of negative emotions. That would be in a nutshell. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, like when there's no external causes of suffering, like nice things being removed or direct painful things happening. Without that, we are still suffering. Does that
Exactly.
right, yeah.
Because we have the tendency, we have the habit or the negative emotions there within us.
Right. Say now the sun is shining and it's very warm and I am peacefully sitting in my yard, but my mind is wandering about and very anxious event in the past or in the future. Is that all pervasive suffering?
Exactly.
I see, I see.
And also that, I mean, we could be right now that I am, probably you too, very relaxed, enjoying the class, but we have this potential that if someone comes and pushes the right button, the negative emotions will arise, will appear. That's the meaning. Marco has a question.
Hi, Carlo. You know, in the ultimate slide, it says no action means no effect. What happens if someone does the action? Does it still have effect on you? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I think so. The third characteristic of karma. Can you
Yes.
slide that? No action. Next one. No action. No,
Yes, that one.
means no effect.
Yes. So if I haven't created the cause, I can't experience its effect. But if someone creates the cause, could that affect me still?
Yeah, I think I get it. It means that if we are experiencing suffering right now, it means that we have created the cause in the past. No one else, but we have created, as well as happiness.
Okay.
That's the meaning. That things do not appear randomly. That will be the meaning of this third point.
Yes.
So
Okay.
do you mean if other people do bad things on me, that's still my own action that created it in the past? For example, I am abused by some very violent person.
Well, the Buddhist basic, we will say it in the Four Noble Truth, the Buddhist basic view of not harming others, the discipline, yeah, it's very important to follow or try not to harm others all the time. That's the basic Buddhist view. But of course, talking about karma, if we experience of negative or positive things too, let's say the fact that we have every day something to eat and drink, that's a result, according to the Buddhist view, from past causes created in the past that are not now ripening as an experience today. The same for the negative things. It's not saying that it is good, if we are abused or whatever, that Buddhism said that that's good, that's your karma. No, it's saying that it's an effect of something that you have created in the past. But it's not saying that it's right to abuse people. It's not saying that it's right to put others into suffering. It's not saying that it's right just to say, oh, it's my karma, I can't do anything about it. You can. Karma is a thing that is always changing, and because we can change our karma in this interdependent scenario, we can also start having much more compassion towards not just to the victims, but also to the one who is creating the suffering, because he will create the causes to suffer in the future a similar experience, an experience similar to the cause, what we call it.
I see. So then will other people's karma affect me?
That's a good question. Of course, karma is an individual thing, but we create it as individuals. Sometimes we share what we call it group karma. That means that we all have created similar causes individually. Let's say we all have created similar causes now to be human beings. Yeah, but each of us created individually. But now we share this experience together. But not because you created for me or I created for you, because we created a similar cause individually and we are having a similar experience. So in that sense, Buddhism will say we are the ones responsible of our actions, because that will create the future experiences. And that created also the past experiences. But the most important thing is that's already gone. The most important thing is how we want to move forward. And that's in our hands, in a way, Buddhism will say.
Thank you.
Any other question?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been suffering this for quite some time. I like to go shopping. And it's not that I don't know if you can describe me as someone that's materialistic or someone that enjoys the finer things in life. Does that represent me as someone who is unhappy, someone who is discontent, who is seeking for something, or someone who just enjoys material things?
That's a good question, but actually it could be.
Because my closet is like overflowing of things. I travel quite a bit. I like to collect things. I like to enjoy it. But it's not because I feel like I'm so unhappy that I go shopping. It's just that I enjoy it. I use it. I travel the world. So I bring things from my travel experiences.
That is fine.
And some people say that, okay, you're so unhappy because you're constantly shopping. Which I'm not sure how true that is.
Yeah, not necessarily. Remember that what I mentioned, the motivation behind the action is much more important than the action itself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very important to question about it, because
thank you for clarifying that. I hope this is really recorded.
Yeah, it is getting recorded. Yeah, okay. The satisfaction in general doesn't mean, it's a mental state at the end, the satisfaction. So, or dukkha, or suffering. So we all want to be happy. That's a fact. And there's nothing wrong to do things that make us happy. Buddhism is not saying that we should stop doing all the things that make us happy. The problem is not the chocolate cake. The problem is, or enjoying the chocolate cake. If you like chocolate cake, then go ahead and have slides or whatever. The point is that believing that they will give you a lasting happiness. That's the main problem. It could give you a temporary happiness, no problem at all. Enjoy it. That's what Buddhism will say. Okay. But as soon as we think that this will give us a lasting happiness through the medium of attachment or sensory pleasures or whatever, that's where the ignorance comes. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does to some extent.
Good.
I guess it's more like you're saying, does it give me just an instant, satisfaction, or is it like, is it lasting? I think for me, it's more of something that I think of it as like something that I can utilize or use. And again, it's the motivation of the purchase. It's like, okay, well, I'll do that for investment. So instead of so much more of just like, oh, I think I'll just buy this because I want to have it. It's more of just, so yeah. But I have to like think about that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good.
One question maybe
actually
related to this comment, because we have the action and we have the consequence of the action. Because if you speak about the chocolate cake, we know it's a temporary pleasure, but we can think about the consequences also.
Yeah, actually, part of the class is to think about all of this. You know, it's part of the reflection that we can get out of here. As I mentioned it at the beginning, you don't need to accept what I say here. You need probably to reflect and think about it. Does it make sense or not? That's very important.
Okay.
So I would like to next slide, next one. So to think during the week, because we will meet the next Sunday. So if you can take a picture of it, or I will send you the recording also. Just a couple of assignments. That means reflections that you can have it during the week. The first one will be analyze a recent event in your life through the lens of the First Noble Truth. Could be whatever. Remember, 3 types of suffering. Analyze something through the lens of the First Noble Truth. Is that true or not? That dissatisfaction is happening in our lives. And remember, something very important is to try to see it in our lives, because it's very easy to see that in other people's life. I mean, it's much easier, right? To see it. Oh, this person is suffering because of attachment, or because of anger, or because of whatever, But try to see it in ourselves. Then secondly, think on how understanding the causes of suffering that were true, that the afflictive emotions and the actions or karma that come through these afflictive emotions, can lead us to a meaningful change in our life. Change, I mean, a way to perceive things differently. That's what Buddhism says. When we say change, it doesn't mean necessarily an external change. It's a different view about ourselves and about reality. So that will be the 2 things that I will invite you or encourage you to think about it during the week. Simi, you have a question?
I just wanted to mention, someone did privately message me about the recording for the class, and so I know we're recording it, but we can let everyone know here if it will also be shared if someone had to leave early, or also if people.
Yeah, some people also couldn't make it today, so they will watch the recording. So yes, I will download it and share the link with all of you to the email. And I think that's the end of the class of today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So it was very interesting.
Thank you, Carlo. Very, very good. Very interesting.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you next Sunday then.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Carlo.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So good, Carlo.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos.